Of the original Godfather cast, more than half are gone. Some left legends behind, others left tragedy the world barely remembers. You've seen the movie 100 times, but do you actually know what happened to Michael, Sonny, or Kay after the camera stopped rolling? Today, we're closing that gap, the untold stories behind the faces that made cinema history. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll find out which beloved cast member's death shocked Hollywood, and it's not the one you're thinking of. Marlon Brando, Vito Corleone. Marlon Brando was born in 1924 in Omaha, Nebraska, and grew up to become one of the most transformative actors in American film history. He was 47 years old when he stepped into the role of Vito Corleone in The Godfather, a performance that would go on to define the later chapter of his career and permanently reshape how audiences understood cinematic power. Quiet, heavy-lidded, and deeply unsettling without ever needing to raise his voice, Brando gave the Don a presence that could fill an entire room through stillness alone, a whisper, a pause, the slow, deliberate lift of a hand. By the time he took on this iconic role, Brando had already changed the direction of American acting entirely. His earlier work in A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront introduced audiences to a raw, more naturalistic style of performance, one built on internal tension rather than theatrical delivery. That approach influenced generations of actors who came after him, many of whom cite Brando as the reason they pursued the craft in the first place. Over the course of his career, he won 2 Academy Awards and remains one of the most studied, imitated, and admired performers in the history of film. Brando passed away in 2004 at the age of 80, following respiratory failure connected to pulmonary fibrosis, a lung disease that had affected him in his later years. What made his portrayal of Vito Corleone so enduring was Brando's deliberate refusal to play power as something loud or aggressive. Instead, he made it slow, personal, and even fatherly, qualities that made the character's underlying danger feel all the more chilling by contrast. Every glance seemed weighted with calculation, and every act of kindness carried an unspoken cost. It was a performance built almost entirely on restraint, and that restraint is precisely why it remains one of the most unforgettable in cinema history, studied by actors and audiences alike more than 50 years later. James Caan, Sonny Corleone. James Caan was born in 1940 in the Bronx, New York, and built a career largely defined by characters who burned bright, moved fast, and rarely held anything back. He was 31 years old when he played Sonny Corleone in The Godfather, a role that perfectly captured his natural talent for volatile, larger-than-life energy on screen. Hot-blooded, reckless, and fiercely loyal to the point of self-destruction, Caan gave Sonny the unmistakable feel of a man who loved his family with his whole chest but could never quite rein in his own explosive temper. Following his breakout in The Godfather, Caan went on to build a remarkably varied and enduring career across multiple genres. Films like Brian's Song, Thief, Misery, and later the holiday favorite Elf each revealed a different side of his range, shifting from raw physical toughness to genuine warmth, sharp comic timing, and real emotional vulnerability depending on what the role demanded. That versatility is part of what made him one of the more underrated actors of his generation. Someone equally convincing whether playing a menacing presence or a lovable, gentle-hearted misfit. Caan passed away in 2022 at the age of 82. Reports at the time cited a combination of heart and kidney-related health complications as contributing factors, though his family did not publicly specify one singular cause of death. Sonny Corleone remains one of Caan's most memorable and frequently referenced roles because he made every single emotion arrive immediately and without any filter. His temper, his booming laughter, and his fierce protectiveness over his family all seemed to spring from the very same live wire buried inside him. That volatile combination is exactly what made Sonny dangerous, deeply human, and ultimately tragic all at once, a character audiences could sense was racing toward disaster long before the story's events ever caught up to him on screen. John Cazale, Fredo Corleone. John Cazale was born in 1935 in Boston, Massachusetts, and remains one of the most quietly influential actors of his generation despite a film career that tragically lasted only a few short years. He was 36 years old when he played Fredo Corleone in The Godfather, a role that showcased his rare and remarkable gift for portraying deep vulnerability on screen, fragile, visibly anxious, and painfully out of step within a family defined by silence and control. Cazale made Fredo feel like the one obvious weakness that everyone around him could sense, yet no one in the family truly cared enough to protect. What makes Cazale's brief career so extraordinary is the sheer weight of its impact relative to its length. He appeared in only 5 feature films during his entire lifetime, and remarkably, every single one of them received a Best Picture nomination at the Academy Awards, an achievement no other actor in history has matched. Beyond his work in The Godfather, his performances in The Conversation, Dog Day Afternoon, and The Deer Hunter further cemented his reputation as an actor of extraordinary emotional depth and precision admired deeply by his fellow performers. Cazale died in 1978 at the young age of 42 after a battle with lung cancer, a loss that cut short a career many believed had only begun to reveal its full potential. Fredo Corleone continues to resonate with audiences because Cazale firmly refused to play him as simple comic relief or one-dimensional weakness. Instead, he layered the character with genuine fear, quiet shame, simmering envy, and an aching, desperate hunger to finally be respected by the very family that consistently overlooked him. In doing so, Cazale transformed the Corleone's softest son into one of the saga's most devastating figures, a man undone not by violence but by the simple, human tragedy of never feeling like enough. Al Lettieri, Virgil the Turk, Sollozzo. Al Lettieri was born in 1928 in New York City and carved out a distinct reputation as one of cinema's most convincing purveyors of calm, business-like menace. He was 44 years old when he played Virgil Sollozzo in The Godfather, a role that perfectly showcased his talent for making violence feel less like theater and more like routine negotiation. Smooth, calculating, and coldly professional in his delivery, Lettieri gave the Turk the unsettling presence of a man who viewed brutality as simply another term in a business deal. Nothing personal, at least not until someone dared to refuse him. Although his career was relatively brief, Lettieri built a solid and memorable run of tough, street-hardened roles throughout the early 1970s. He appeared opposite Steve McQueen in The Getaway, took a leading role alongside Charles Bronson in Mr. Majestic, and starred in McHugh alongside John Wayne. In each of these performances, he brought an authentic, grounded sense of menace that made his characters feel less like typical movie villains and more like genuine, real-world threats. Lettieri died in 1975 at the age of 47 after suffering a sudden heart attack, cutting short a career that was clearly still gaining significant momentum at the time. Sollozzo's importance to The Godfather cannot be overstated, as he essentially serves as the catalyst that redirects the entire trajectory of the story. Lettieri played him with just enough calm restraint to feel completely believable, and just enough underlying ruthlessness to feel genuinely frightening, striking the precise balance the role required. It was ultimately Sollozzo's steady, unrelenting pressure that forced Michael Corleone to abandon his identity as a family outsider and take his first irreversible step into the violent world his family had built. Richard S. Castellano, Peter Clemenza. Richard S. Castellano was born in 1933 in the Bronx, New York, and brought an unmistakable authenticity to every role he played. He was 38 years old when he took on Peter Clemenza in The Godfather, a performance that captured his gift for blending warmth with quiet menace. Heavy-set, affable, and dangerous in the most understated way, Castellano made Clemenza feel like a beloved figure at the family table one moment and a coldly efficient enforcer the next, often within the same scene. Before his career-defining turn in The Godfather, Castellano had already earned an Academy Award nomination for his role in Lovers and Other Strangers, proving his range beyond crime dramas. But it was his earthy, lived-in presence as Clemenza that made him unforgettable to generations of film fans, establishing a screen persona that felt less like acting and more like someone you might actually know from the neighborhood. Castellano died in 1988 at age 55 following a heart attack. Clemenza gave the Corleone saga much of its old-world texture and humor. Castellano played him as practical, endlessly loyal, and surprisingly funny, a man capable of walking a young Michael through the mechanics of murder with the same ease as explaining a family recipe, then pausing mid-crisis to deliver one of cinema's most quoted lines, "Don't forget the cannoli." That mix of humor and cold efficiency is exactly why Clemenza remains one of the film's most beloved supporting characters. Sterling Hayden, Captain McCluskey. Sterling Hayden was born in 1916 in Montclair, New Jersey, and lived one of the more unusual lives of any actor of his generation. He was 55 years old when he played Captain McCluskey in The Godfather, bringing a weathered, imposing physicality to the role. Heavyset, corrupt, and blunt as the baton he carried, Hayden made McCluskey feel like law enforcement gone rotten from the inside, a man whose badge did not protect the public, but instead made him more dangerous within the Corleone world. By the time he took on this role, Hayden had already built an impressive body of work in films like The Asphalt Jungle, The Killing, and Dr. Strangelove, establishing himself as a reliable presence in both crime dramas and dark satire. Off-screen, his life was just as colorful. He served as a merchant seaman and wartime intelligence operative during World War II, later becoming a sailor and published author, often expressing more passion for the sea than for Hollywood itself. Hayden died in 1986 at age 70 after a battle with cancer. Captain McCluskey plays a pivotal role in The Godfather because he expands the story's understanding of power. Through him, Michael Corleone learns that corruption is not confined to the mafia. It also hides behind police badges, government offices, and other symbols of public trust. Hayden played McCluskey as ugly, arrogant, and utterly convincing, and his presence in the restaurant scene helped transform a simple dinner into one of the most consequential turning points in film history. Abe Vigoda, Salvatore Tessio. Abe Vigoda was born in 1921 in Brooklyn, New York, and brought decades of stage experience to his breakout film role. He was 51 years old when he played Salvatore Tessio in The Godfather, embodying the character with a weary, watchful stillness. Tired-eyed, quiet, and difficult to read at a glance, Vigoda made Tessio feel like a longtime soldier of the family, someone who had lasted as long as he had by observing carefully and speaking only when necessary. Following his film breakthrough, Vigoda found lasting fame on television as Detective Phil Fish in Barney Miller, and its spin-off series, Fish Rolls, that revealed a completely different dimension of his dry, deadpan presence. That contrast-cold menace in one role, weary comic charm in the other, became a hallmark of his career and endeared him to an entirely new generation of fans. Vigoda died in 2016 at age 94 from natural causes, having lived long enough to become something of a cultural icon, partly due to a running joke about his longevity that followed him in his later years. Tessio's betrayal remains one of the film's most quietly devastating moments, precisely because Vigoda played it with such calm resignation. He does not portray Tessio as a reckless traitor, but as a man coolly weighing the odds and making what he sees as the only rational business decision left to him. That eerie composure is what makes his final walk toward an uncertain fate so unforgettable, a betrayal delivered not with anger, but with the quiet acceptance of a man who already knows how the story ends. Richard Conte, Don Emilio Barzini. Richard Conte was born in 1910 in Jersey City, New Jersey, and had already established himself as a seasoned veteran of crime cinema by the time he joined The Godfather. He was 62 years old when he played Don Emilio Barzini, bringing decades of screen experience to a role built on restraint and quiet menace. Smooth, refined, and subtly venomous, Conte made Barzini feel like the rival who smiles warmly in public while orchestrating betrayal behind closed doors. Long before this role, Conte had carved out a respected career in film noir and crime dramas, delivering standout performances in House of Strangers, Thieves, Highway, and The Big Combo. That background made him an ideal fit for a character who needed to feel like a genuine equal to Vito Corleone, someone with the experience, patience, and cunning to challenge the Corleone family for control. Conte died in 1975 at age 65 after suffering a heart attack just a few years after cementing his legacy with this role. Barzini succeeds as the villain precisely because Conte plays him as civilized rather than savage. Unlike Sonny's explosive temper or Vito's commanding weight, Barzini is polished, unhurried, and endlessly calculating. That restraint is what makes him such an effective hidden enemy, a rival who never needs to raise his voice because his patience and precision do all the damage, quietly steering the war against the Corleones from behind a courteous smile. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. See you in the next one.